Marx has showed very effectively how, because of the value form in capitalism, because of the form of commodity production, of the commodity form, there is an idealism that capital produces, that it is not labor but labor power, and by extension from labor power, the question of labor time which becomes crucial. So all that is solid melts into air, right? And that on the surface, of course, he's saying that when you look at capitalism, it appears as an immense accumulation of commodities, he says, in capital. But we also remember the way he talks about the sphere of exchange, of circulation, of how different portions of total social labor are placed in equivalence with each other, right? And which is what allows the different portions of social labor to actually have value, right? That the use value they contain would also be carriers of value. The use value that the different portions of total social labor contain would also now be would also be valorized, right, as value. So he uses the metaphor of hieroglyphs, that these are hieroglyphs that and he also gives the example of language, how it is a totally social process, that each word has a meaning because of the character of language as a social product, right? So there is that tendency towards idealism, which in a different context, Foucault, I think it is in his Order of Things, refers to as thought which is always necessarily action. And then he's of course distinguishing between the Cartesian cogito and what he calls the modern cogito. The modern cogito would be the one which would correspond to what Marx is talking about. So Foucault really grasps this point, and then he says that that action is, you can think of action in empirical terms, in phenomenological terms, action as something concrete, something empirical, realist, materialist, etc. But for what Foucault says with the modern cogito, every thought is action. Thought is necessarily action, right? So this tendency of idealism is already there in modern life, in capitalism. But then with Nietzsche, we have a slightly different model. Because with Nietzsche, he tends to look at the tendency towards idealism, going back to the rise of Christianity. He looks at maybe the rise of classical societies. If you were to take the axial period, the period from where, say, in the Indian context, you have the end of the old Vedic ritualistic society and the rise of Upanishadic society, this notions of Brahman and Paramatma, what later people like Vivekananda would talk about as Vedanta, right? That there's this one cosmic mind, soul, and the doctrine of the Maya. All of this, or in Christianity, we have the the higher value given to the soul, to what is called the unegoistic actions, and we should all rise above our immediate selfish interests. This entire thing about detachment from this world, and there is a higher thing up there, the spiritual, the emphasis on the spiritual. So Nietzsche, when he talks about the ascetic ideal, he's already seeing this long time back. In fact, the soul, the very notion of the soul for him is a function of certain material conditions. So when later Foucault talks about the soul is the prison of the body, not that the body is imprisoned in the soul. The body is imprisoned in the soul. And here you will see, we always prone to a little bit of confusion here, because we tend to think of the soul as trapped in the body. But Foucault is saying that the body is trapped in the soul. Right? So in a way, the soul is there in order to trap the body. So it is not. So now that is, you can say, it's a classic Nietzschean move. So if that is the case, then we also segue into Marx here, right? Because Marx is already telling you of how it is the idealism in capitalism. Idealism as in the labor power idealism, right? The time idealism of capital, which has real material effects, and which in fact valorizes labor, which allows the consummation of value itself, right? So what we see here then is that the soul, the mind, is something which is spontaneously produced. I mean, the social cosmic mind is spontaneously produced by society itself, and with what happened in society, with the rise of a conqueror, with the rise of a dominant class, and so the people at the bottom are they are, it's like their survival tactic, where their own compulsion not to be able to live a life of vitality, their own compulsion whereby they must tone down their vitality and just live at the level of a low level equilibrium of life, just talking about love and compassion and taking care of each other, all these moral values. You see, all of this is a way in which those who are already smashed and conquered and ruled over, people at the bottom, they then, this is their response. It is like, what Nietzsche talks about, the Jews taking spiritual revenge. By then, say, resorting to money and finance. right? So he will counterpose the Jews, Judea against Rome. Rome, pagan Rome, is that vitality, that courage and bravery and will to power, and all of that. They don't need a soul. They don't need a soul. So the soul, as the social mind, is produced in that way. Now, in the Indian context, here we have to bring in we have to add to this, in fact, because the importance given to the soul, to Atma, to Brahman, we already have in the Upanishads, for example. Or say, take the way Mandukya Upanishad tries to create a homology between the highest level of activity and the highest level of passivity, right? It's kind of one and the same. So susupti, deep sleep, where you don't even see dreams, that's where you have that is where all your that is what allows all the activity. That is the core kind of powerhouse, you see. So that we already have there, But I think attached to that is the doctrine of the Maya and the entire focus on detachment and withdrawal, and the path of renunciation. Now, the path of renunciation, Tyag, Balidayan, and the entire thing about going to the forest, living in the ashram there, the entire focus on renunciation, on the Brahmin who will not just renounce, just generally focus on renunciation, but also, and that's the most important part here, is also will have a particular kind of diet, and place himself in the food chain in such a way that he is pure, right? So one is the doctrine of Maya, renunciation, saying this world is false, and we should aspire to the higher world, and there is a larger cosmic mind, cosmic soul, the entire theory of the Jivatma. So Jivatma and Paramatma, right? That is the connection they want to make. But with that is this entire thing about the diet and the food chain, and from there the purity and pollution. Of course, attached to that is so. I mean, for Nietzsche, I think the theory of dharma would suffice. So, in order to validate Nietzsche's theories, we can go up till the notion of dharma. If we just had the notion of dharma, then we could have said, okay, Nietzsche is proved right even in the Indian context. But of course, in the Indian context, we also have swadharma, right? And that's, of course, connected to all these things about purity, pollution, food chain, the Asura versus Arya, the Asura, Asuras lives in the land of buffaloes, and the Aryas live in the land of the antelope. So the land of the antelope is, of course, that's even the meat is lighter, you are more sprightly like the antelope, and you're there is and you're and it's more intellectual. uh, the mind is better. It is good for the speculative mind, whereas the buffalo is like the lazy native kind of thing. It's lethargic and it bogs you down into some kind of a, so you always slowed down by too much attachment to matter, to things, to the local deities. You don't have the sky gods with you. So all of this that you have in the Indian context. So what does this tell us now? So what we have here is starting from Marx and Foucault and Nietzsche. Uh, we thought that the Indian idealism or is Christian idealism, for example. Uh, you know, uh, Nietzsche kind of propels us. Nietzsche urges us in a way to kind of open this up to much before capitalism. And when we do that, we he surely captures the Christian mode, but of course he also captures to some extent the Buddhist. He refers to Buddhism and the Upanishads, to India, and he's of course also having India in mind when he talks about the ascetic mode. What we have is that in the Indian context is that there is something more than just the ascetic ideal. In India, what we have then is, in terms of what is more than just the ascetic ideal, what we have is what I pointed out, which is the food chain and purity and pollution and Swadharma, the doctrine of Maya, and all of that. Now, now it is true that in India, then further, of course, it becomes Sagun and Nirgun, where the Nirgun, which is supposed to be radical and challenging some facets of Brahmanism, some claim all facets of Brahmanism, but still it holds on to the ascetic ideal, I think, and I've showed this in some of my recent writings. But I think if we were to see whether the idealism of capital shares some homology with Indian idealism, as we find from, say, the Upanishads onwards, I think that is the question that we need to address.